We got big news this past weekend from none other than Ian McKellen himself that both Gandalf and Frodo will be returning for the hunt for Gollum. Now, I've seen a lot of discussion about this online, a lot of confusion from various podcasts and people posting on social media about where the movie fits into place, like how Frodo could possibly show up. So I wanted to kind of give my 2 cents, what I think is the most likely scenario, and hopefully clear this up a little bit for folks. Now, this comes from a panel that Sir Ian McKellen was on with a rather impressive group of Lord of the Rings alums, looking at the guests for this convention. It's really impressive, the group that they put together. So we had Sir Ian himself, Elijah Wood, Sean Astin, Dominic Monaghan, Billy Boyd, Andy Serkis, John Rhys-Davies, David Wenham, Craig Parker, and Bruce Hopkins. That's a pretty good people were in for a treat for Lord of the Rings fans that attended. That's a great group right there. But during this panel, Sir Ian said, "I'll tell you 2 secrets about casting when referring to The Hunt for Gollum. There's a character in the movie called Frodo. There's another character called Gandalf." And that's all that he says on that topic. Now, naturally, the assumption here is that this means both Ian McKellen and Elijah Wood will be reprising their roles for the film. Quick note, just a technicality here. He does say that the characters will appear. He doesn't specifically say that he and Elijah would be playing them. That's a mere technicality. I think the very strong implication here, I think the chances of the two of them, especially Sir Ian himself, but the chances that he doesn't mean Elijah Wood is also coming back is pretty much zero. I doubt that this would be something he would drop with Elijah Wood sitting next to him at this panel. Now, we've talked before here on the channel about the Hunt for Gollum. I did a whole video on the Hunt for Gollum and what that story is in the books, so you can check that out if you're interested. But Gandalf makes total sense for this particular story. This story is essentially about, in the books at least, is about Aragorn and Gandalf trying to track down Gollum to find out what they can about the ring. Now, how would Frodo fit into this? I would honestly be surprised if this is anything more than a cameo. Like, think of the way Elijah Wood showed up at the beginning of the first Hobbit film, An Unexpected Journey. He was basically there as part of that framing device where we saw Ian Holm, recounting, reading from the Red Book and recounting the tale of his adventure, and that kind of served as a springboard into the story. I wouldn't be surprised if this is something similar to that. The whole idea, like the whole reason that Gandalf, has this motivation to seek out Gollum is because he finally suspects very strongly that Bilbo's ring might be the One Ring, and he needs to make sure. Like, how does he confirm that? And so that kind of kicks off the events where Gandalf seeks out Aragorn and tasks him with tracking down Gollum. So if you're placing this in the timeline of the films itself, it would fall into a period within Fellowship of the Ring. So basically between Gandalf saying to Frodo, "Keep it secret, keep it safe," and him saying, "Is it secret? Is it safe?" So we get a couple shots in between that time. In the film itself, we see, Gandalf going to Minas Tirith, and that's where he reads the Scroll of Isildur. And then another clip that we get is Gollum being tortured by Sauron. So when he yells out, "Shire Baggins," that also takes place within this timeline. We don't really know for sure exactly how much time has passed. I mean, I think most people would probably assume it's a few months or so, because all we really see happening outside the world is Gandalf making the trip to Minas Tirith, which obviously, is not just a couple days. It would be a significant amount of time, but in the books, that's a period of 17 years. So while the films, don't necessarily convey that it's 17 years, Frodo doesn't seem to age 17 years by any means. They also don't necessarily conflict that. So they could play with the idea that that's over at least a few years' time so that they could fit this story in. They don't conclusively say 2 months later, or so, something that like puts something finite on it. In the books, Gandalf actually goes back a few times and would check in on Frodo in between this time as well. For about 7 years, he would pop in periodically till about 3008. That's the last time Frodo sees him, until he comes back and says, guess what? Your ring is actually really, really super important to the fate of the world. But in 3008, Gandalf would go back and meet up with Aragorn once again. Aragorn's first attempt at finding Gollum is unsuccessful, and then he kind of takes a break. He goes to meet up with his mother to see her for the final time in her life. It's really heart-wrenching stuff. It's great. It's in the Tale of Aragorn and Arwen. It's in the appendices. Definitely read it. I tell people all the time, read the Tale of Aragorn and Arwen, because it's fantastic stuff. But Aragorn and Gandalf, they meet up in 3008, and they decide, okay, we need to take another crack at this. We need to track down Gollum. This is starting to get more pressing. I mean, it's like 9 years later that they finally get back. So, it's pressing in Middle-earth book terms. Now, it's actually after Gollum escapes Mordor, or rather is set loose by Sauron, that Aragorn would finally find him in the Dead Marshes. And that's when Aragorn takes him up to Mirkwood, where Thranduil and Legolas are. He's held captive by the elves until Gandalf can arrive. So Gandalf, after researching in Minas Tirith and finding out what he does about the ring, he goes to talk to Gollum to kind of confirm what he already, has come to heavily, heavily suspect, that the ring that Gollum once possessed is the One Ring. So like I said, essentially the story, kind of starts and ends with keep it secret, keep it safe, and is it secret, is it safe in terms of the films. So who knows? Maybe that's where Frodo comes in. Maybe he's at the beginning or the end of this tale, to tie it into Lord of the Rings. Like I said, I really doubt that this will be anything more than just a cameo, like a very, very brief appearance by Frodo. Because honestly, Frodo's story's been told. Like, there's not a whole lot more to explore with that character that's not already in the films, unless you're talking about Scouring of the Shire, which happens much later at the very end of the Lord of the Rings tale, or, if it was some kind of part of a bigger tale of Frodo's parents dying and his youth. If anything, that would have come in at the end of the Hobbit films. I was actually kind of rooting for that at the time. I had it all mapped out in my head. But anyway, that's a digression. Now, one of the things that's interesting, that's kind of flown under the radar because, understandably people have really focused on the Frodo thing, is that the film will start filming in May of 2026. And for those of you who don't know, right now the release date is set for December of 2027. So that'd be a little over a year and a half from start of filming to release. So we'll see how that timeline plays out. If that, I know there's some pretty big movies. I think one of the new Avengers movies is coming out December 2027. So it will be interesting to watch, how the production progresses. And so we'll see how the entire production develops. But kind of cool to know that they're going to start filming in May. But I'm curious to know what you guys think, what you're looking forward to about this project, what maybe some of your concerns are. Personally, there's been a lot of talk about Gollum. I've, gone on the record here where the character I'm most interested and excited for in this tale of hunting for Gollum is Aragorn. I just think there's some really rich storytelling possibilities in his younger life, whether that's in this film or some other project. And personally, I would just relish in the opportunity to see what Aragorn and Gandalf, what their relationship was like, before the Lord of the Rings. When we jump into Lord of the Rings, there's definitely this sense that's implied, and we know, this is true from the book. So book fans have a leg up in this, in that we know that there is a previous relationship there, and that they've worked together and known each other for quite some time. But that's the part that really draws my attention when I look at this story, is the opportunity to see Gandalf and Aragorn working together, trying to solve this puzzle of what's going on with this ring. Where is this creature Gollum at? What does he know? how can we find him, and seeing Aragorn use some of his ranger skills and all that. I just think that's a really fun element to have in this film. And so I'm very curious to see, whether Viggo Mortensen signs on, whether they, cast a younger actor as Aragorn, how that plays out. I would love to see if they can do it, and it would look good to have Viggo back, because he's amazing. And I think if he signed on for it, like he seems like one of those guys that's, not just gonna sign on for the fun of it. Like it's got to be something good for him to sign on for. So I mean, if he doesn't sign on and they go for a younger actor, I don't think that's necessarily a death knell. But I do think if he does sign on, that's definitely going to give me a boost of confidence, because I think that will indicate that he's seen something in this script that he feels it's worth revisiting this character in this world. Well, hopefully this has cleared up for some folks who are kind of hazy on the timeline a bit. That's the big news this week. Frodo and Gandalf returning to Middle-earth in the form of the film Hunt for Gollum. Let me know what you think about that in the comments, and let me know if you would like to see more of this new stuff as news breaks about, films, TV, video games, books. It's all fun Tolkien stuff. It happens sporadically sometimes, but let me know, do you like this format where I just kind of report the news to you? Would you rather see, just pop up live streams when news breaks? Let me know in the comments so I can give you guys the content you want. And please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.